A student once asked me during her second or third lesson how long it would be before she stopped making mistakes. If you are an experienced knitter, you know the answer to that question is, say it with me, never. There are so many different ways to accidentally mess up knitting projects, and mistakes are simply going to happen. Practice and experience do tend to reduce how often you find yourself swearing at your projects, but you're never not going to make mistakes, and it's pretty normal to feel freaked out about screw-ups until you learn how to fix them. If you are an experienced knitter, you might not get much out of this series, but if you are someone who is still building their basic skills, I'm going to cover the basics of how to bail yourself out when you mess up. In this episode, I'll be covering 3 critical skills: how to tink or unknit, slipping stitches without twisting them, and how to pick up drop stitches. As a bonus, at the end of this video, I'll show you how to drop stitches on purpose in order to fix mistakes long after you made them with a super useful technique called laddering down. If you find this video helpful, subscribe to my channel and hit the notifications button. That will make it easier for you to find the rest of the videos in this series. So first, let's talk about tinking. And tinking, T-I-N-K, is just knit in reverse. It refers to undoing one stitch at a time. And one of the reasons you might need to do this is, oops, you made a mistake. You got distracted, you were tired, something went wrong, and you did the wrong stitch. I'm trying to do stockinette fabric here, and it's not supposed to have a purl stitch in the middle of it. So we need to work back to here so that we can fix this. You've got a couple of choices for moving over here. You can slip these stitches over and correct this, or if for whatever reason, say you were doing a sequence of stitches and you ended up because of this stitch over here, you ended up getting off somewhere, then you need to undo on your way back. So let's work on tinking, taking out stitches one at a time, going backwards. The thing you want to do is you want to identify the stitch and the space that the working yarn is coming out of. Of course, this loop around the needle is the stitch just formed, so that's what we need to undo. And holding the working yarn out to the left over here, regardless of whether you're a continental or an American style knitter, and kind of pulling on everything lets you kind of see the working yarn is speeding up into this space. You can take this tip and follow it all the way up into that space to undo this, but that twists your stitch. So best practice is to look at where this yarn over is coming out, and it's here inside this hole. So we want to stick the tip of our left hand needle in and put enough up there to keep everything stable, and then we're going to back the right tip out, and that frees the yarn, and we get it out of the way. If you're continental like me, you can reel up the excess around your finger if that gives you the tension you need to do the next one in the sequence. So here's the yarn over, and that's the space it's coming out of. So we stick the tip in there, and we back the right tip out, freeing that yarn over. Move it to the back. And we'll do the next one. In, release, move it out of the way. And you can do that as far back as you need to. So you saw what tinking looked like from the stockinette or knit side of the fabric looks like. Let me show you what it looks like from the purl side. And here on this side, because the yarn starts in front, it's kind of nice. On the purl side, you can just follow the working yarn with the tip of the needle and just up and through and back out that right tip. And up into that hole, following the working yarn, back this tip out and pop that yarn over. Now, if you're an American style knitter, a lot of you are used to holding your yarn to this side of the fabric. And that can make it really hard to see where you're trying to go for tinking purposes. So I recommend for you to try and make this easier to see where you need to go. For each stitch you need to take out, hold the yarn to this side of the fabric if you can, and if you have to, just squeeze it between a couple of fingers and pull till you can see. But if nothing else, just letting it dangle loose so that you can take the tip and follow it up into that stitch. You'll have an easier time of pulling that out. Now on this one, we're going to kind of pull the fabric down, and you can see we need to pass underneath the purl ridge there. We'll take the tip of our needle, insert it into that purl bump, right tip out, and pull the yarn free. That's it. That's tinking. That's knitting backwards. You don't necessarily have to undo everything in the row over to this point in order just to fix this one stitch. We can just slip our stitches from the right needle to the left needle. But we want to make sure that when we do that, that we don't twist them. And there's a specific direction you want to move things if you don't want them to twist. If you are moving stitches from the right needle to the left needle, you want to enter knitwise but underneath that back leg and transfer it over. See, these stitches are what's called seated the proper direction. If you pull down on here, the leading leg is in the front of the needle. The following leg is in the back. So this leading leg is the one that is kind of to the right. See, the one in the back is kind of pointing to the left. We want to keep them in that orientation. We want to keep them seated the proper direction on the needle. So again, we're going to go knitwise, but we're going to do so underneath the back loop or back leg when we transfer them over. Now, unless a pattern tells you otherwise, and sometimes they do for special fabric effects, when you're moving from the left needle onto the right needle, you go purlwise onto the front. Purlwise under the front. Purlwise under the front. Purlwise under the front. Keeps things in proper orientation. So unless your pattern tells you otherwise, if you need to slip a stitch, knitwise under the back leg if you're going from right to left, and purlwise under the front if you're going from the left needle to the right needle. So let's say you were working along and you were transferring stitches and you dropped one, or you were working on your project late one night and you dropped a stitch, and suddenly you have this. Don't panic. One of the great things about knitting is that these connected columns that allow stitches to run also mean these stitches can be rebuilt. Now, I love knit and crochet equally, but even if you never do a single stitch of crochet in your life, a crochet hook of some sort or a variety of sizes of crochet hooks really do belong in your knitting kit, because these are one of a knitter's best friends for fixing oopses, for fixing drop stitches, picking up drop stitches, certain great cast-ons and bind-offs. But let me show you how they work in this case. And I personally, especially for knitting purposes, I really like these rings because you have a variety of sizes from chunky up to fairly fine that'll let you fix mistakes with a variety of sizes of yarn. This is a handy tool, pointed end, hook end. Sometimes just grandma's old-fashioned straight hook will work just fine. These are what we call the ladder rungs. And when you're rebuilding a column of stitches, what you want to make sure is that you keep them in order. So like, remember the old Ghostbusters movie, Don't Cross the Streams? Yeah, don't let your ladders get out of order. From the knit side, we want to capture a loop. Make sure we have all of the strands there. And you want to reach through that first ladder behind there, and you want to pull this up and through. Take that hook out, reinsert it, bring the next one through. The reason I pull that out is I want to try and not twist my stitch. Now we have this last one pulled up. We're going to bring it up here and we're going to park it over here on the needle. Here we go, rebuilt. Now don't worry if the column of stitches that you rebuilt, if they're a little out of balance with ones on either side. When you're done with your project or whatever you're making and you give it a washing and a blocking, that unevenness tends to work itself out, tends to rebalance. So don't let that bother you too much. Now let me show you how to pick up drop stitches from the purl side. So you're zooming along and you look away, you get distracted, and oh no, you got some drop stitches. Picking up stitches from the purl side, you come at rebuilding these from a different side. You want the ladder rungs to be in the front. So one at a time in proper order. Insert a hook from behind, and that ladder that's in front, just pull it up and through, and then pinch. Take the next ladder rung, bring it here to the front, take your hook, stick it in through there, and bring this up and through. And now we can take this stitch, pop it back on the tip of our needle, and all is right with the world again. Knitting up a small square out of scrap yarn and playing with these techniques before you need to apply them on a real project is very helpful. Practicing on a piece of fabric you aren't attached to will help you build your confidence for when the time comes to apply them to a real project. For today's bonus round, let me show you why you might want to drop stitches on purpose. Let's talk about laddering down, which is fantastic. This is an option that is only available to knitters. This is one of the strengths that knitting has over crochet. As much as I love crochet, there is only one option to fix mistakes in crochet, and that is to rip it out till you get back to that point and redo. Knitting, because of these interconnected columns of stitches, you have the option to reach down into your fabric, make a correction, and rebuild up without having to rip out everything in between. All you have to do to ladder down is slip over to this top stitch in the column where the mistake is at. And you want to make sure you don't lose stitches on either side, but you intentionally drop that stitch off of the needle and pull everything open until you get down to below where the problematic stitches were. And now you do the same thing you were doing as if these were just accidentally dropped stitches. You are rebuilding up to the top. So we're rebuilding our stockinette fabric here that had a couple of oops purl stitches in the middle of it instead. Okay, we bring this left tip down where we need it, park this on there, and there we go. Ready to rock and roll again. I sincerely hope you learned something from this video today that leads to more comfort and less stress with your knitting. Next up in this series will be the 3 most common knitting mistakes I see in people's projects and how to fix them. Thanks for watching, and now go make something that makes you happy.